brought you dressed today, you little f***ing prick.
And we were asking for lucky punch to improve.
No one should ever be sexually assaulted, let alone a child. You can't even imagine what that kid must be going through or the pain their parents must feel. And sometimes in court, these parents lose it. But can you even blame them? These criminals attacked by their victims' parents are the absolute worst of the worst. First, let's talk about John Acklin. Let me tell you a story that'll make your blood boil. It's about this monster named John Acklin, a guy so vile that even the judge couldn't hold back. Imagine this, a man, 56 years old, who was supposed to be a protector, instead became the nightmare of two innocent children. And when justice finally caught up with him, he got what he deserved. A sentence so long it practically screams, "You'll never breathe free air again."
These cases are still heartbreaking. For as long as I've been doing this, and for as hard as the state police, the Texas Rangers, and the Child Advocacy Center works on behalf of these children, and as courageous as these child victims, survivors have been, they affect us all.
So, here's how it started. Acklin, originally from Livingston but living in Bandera, Texas, thought he could escape his past. But in 2017, investigators in New York began looking into reports of sexual assault that had haunted two young victims for years. Turns out, between December 2004 and March 2006, Acklin had been abusing these kids who were under 11. The abuse stopped when he moved to Texas, but the damage he left behind, permanent scars that no amount of time could heal.
I'm not defined by what my character is not defined by what you've done to me and everything I've been through. And I hope that you never see the light of day again. I hope that you're never going to be around any children.
Fast forward to his trial. The Columbia County Court was packed, and you could feel the tension. Acklin was hit with some heavy charges: sexual conduct against a child, aggravated sexual abuse in the first and second degrees, and criminal sexual acts. It was a laundry list of horrors, and honestly, seeing those charges laid out was enough to make your stomach turn. The prosecution didn't hold back either. They brought in evidence, testimonies, and even video recordings. The defense? Well, Acklin's lawyer, John Hillman, tried to argue his case, but let's be real. How do you defend the indefensible, especially when Acklin himself stood there denying everything?
Your statement says it didn't happen. I don't know how they can accuse me of this. I was always good to those kids.
Good to those kids? That's the kind of twisted logic only someone like him could come up with. But let me tell you, the judge wasn't buying it. Not for a second. Hunter Jonathan D. Nichols didn't mince words. During the sentencing, he laid it out for Acklin in a way that made everyone in the courtroom feel the weight of justice. He said,
I wondered, as I prepared for today, if you realized on that second day of your interview that that was your last day of freedom on this earth. Because it is.
And he wasn't done. Nichols made it crystal clear.
Today is your day for incarceration, Mr. Acklin. You will be incarcerated in state prison for the rest of your natural life.
Acklin sat there, stone-faced, showing zero remorse. Even as one of his brave victims spoke her truth, she looked him in the eye and said,
I'm finally happy that today I'm able to seek justice for what I've been through. And I hope that he's sentenced to the rest of his life in prison because he should never be let out to harm any other children.
And you know what? She got her wish. Acklin was sentenced to 335 years in state prison. That's right, 335 years. Now here's the kicker. Even after all that, Acklin didn't flinch. No tears, no apologies, just cold indifference. How someone can be so emotionless in the face of everything they've done is beyond me. But honestly, that's what makes this sentence feel like justice. He doesn't just get to live out his days in prison. He gets to live out his days knowing he's been completely cut off from the world he terrorized. Oh, and get this, his crimes didn't just impact his victims. The investigators, the prosecutors, even the Texas Rangers who helped bring him down, they all said this case left a mark on them.
These cases are still heartbreaking. For as long as I've been doing this, and for as hard as the state police, the Texas Rangers, and the Child Advocacy Center works on behalf of these children, and as courageous as these child victims, survivors have been, they affect us all.
So, John Acklin will spend every single moment of the rest of his miserable life behind bars. And honestly, good riddance. This world doesn't need people like him walking free. Now, buckle up because the next case I've got for you, it's somehow even worse.
There's no remorse. The conduct exhibited and testified to is beyond description.
Goliath Van Alphen. This case is one of those that leaves you speechless. It's about 4 people who didn't just ruin lives, they destroyed innocence.
That you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers to have done.
Goliath Van Alphen from Claverack, Janine Wendover Van Alphen Moot from Hillsdale, Eugene Shackleton from Kopake, and William Wendover III from Cairo were all charged with abusing 4 children under the age of 11, kids who were related to them. Can you even imagine? Here's what they were hit with. Goliath Van Alphen faced 6 counts of aggravated sexual abuse, 1 count of promoting a sexual performance by a child, 2 counts of a criminal sexual act, 1 count of sexual abuse, and 1 count of solicitation. Janine Van Alphen Moot was charged with promoting a sexual performance by a child. William Wendover III, 2 counts of aggravated sexual abuse, 1 count of promoting a sexual performance by a child, 3 counts of criminal sexual act, 3 counts of sexual abuse, and 1 count of solicitation. Then there's Eugene Shackleton, 6 counts of aggravated sexual abuse, 2 counts of criminal sexual acts, 2 counts of sexual abuse, and 1 count of solicitation. It turns out that between 2009 and 2011, these 4 were systematically abusing 4 young kids. In court, D.A. Chaika laid it all out. The kids were forced to engage in acts with each other while being filmed. It gets worse. Janine Van Alphen Moot made 2 boys sleep with her and even used objects on them. One of the victims, a 9-year-old girl, testified that Goliath used a knife handle on her after abusing her. Can you even begin to comprehend the trauma?
You did so at a time when, as a father, you should have been teaching them to grow up and teaching them how to fish, how to hunt, how to play baseball, how to do other things that could have made them happy and positive.
During the trial, one of the kids bravely spoke up saying, "I'm super upset by them. They ruined my life. I wish every day I could be a baby again, so someone could take me away and save me from Janine and Goliath, and I could have a better, safer life." The defense tried to argue technicalities, like the lack of specific dates, but it didn't fly. The details were far too horrifying, and the judge wasn't buying any excuses.
You abused a trust which is placed in an adult by a child, and I cannot ignore that. These young children appear to have been suffered greatly.
Despite everything that came out during the trial, there was no real remorse, especially from Goliath Van Alphen. His lack of regret was scary, and it didn't go unnoticed.
There's no remorse. The conduct exhibited and testified to is beyond description, and these children have been harmed. I cannot see in any way, shape, or form any appropriate sentence but the following.
In the end, Goliath Van Alphen, Janine Van Alphen Moot, William Wendover III, and Eugene Shackleton were all sentenced to life in prison. Their crimes were unspeakable, and this sentence was the only way justice could even begin to be served, just like this next case involving David Solomon.
It happened in the car, I don't know what date. It happened every car ride wherever we went.
How would you feel if someone your child trusted, like their coach, turned out to be their worst nightmare? That's exactly what happened in this horrifying case involving David Solomon, a Florida-based Little League baseball coach who betrayed 2 young boys he was supposed to protect.
May God have mercy on your soul, because where you're going, nobody else will.
Solomon was charged with sexual assault after an 11-year-old boy bravely told his parents about the abuse he endured. In court, Solomon sat emotionless, shaking his head as the audio of the boy's testimony played. The boy recounted how the coach had abused him during car rides, using a code name, The Claw, for his inappropriate actions.
On the car ride, that's when he mostly did it. Every red light, he would go claw, would you go claw, would you go. But one time he just yelled at me because I moved him away from the claw. And then he was like, "Hey, it's part of the bro code. You have to let me do this every red light."
Solomon even convinced the boy it was part of the bro code, making him feel like he had no choice but to endure it.
It happened in the car, I don't know what date. It happened every car ride wherever we went.
The defense tried to fight back by accusing the prosecution of misconduct, but Solomon's past made their case an uphill battle. This wasn't his first brush with accusations. Back in 2000, Solomon was arrested for molesting 2 boys under 14 from a baseball team he coached. Those charges were dropped when one of the boys withdrew his story, but it was still a very messy and suspicious situation. This time, the victims and their parents refused to stay silent. In court, the parents didn't hold back.
You will never understand the pain, the hurt, and the damage you caused my son. You stole his innocence from him.
As an 11-year-old boy, 13 and who knows how long, because of you, he must suffer the rest of his life. Shame on you.
But Solomon showed no remorse, denying all accusations with a flat.
I did not harm anyone's kids. I didn't. Not one. Not one.
In the end, Solomon took a plea deal, landing him 12 years in prison and 10 years of sex offender probation. However, his attorney insisted he only took the deal to avoid a harsher sentence. The prosecution said it was to spare the children from reliving their trauma, but the damage had been done.
May God have mercy on your soul, because where you're going, nobody else will.
Oh, and here's something else. Solomon is actually going to get credit for time he's already served. Crazy, right? Mind you, like I pointed out before, this isn't even his first run-in with the law. Back in 2000, he was arrested in Miami-Dade on molestation charges, but those were eventually dropped. Makes you wonder how things might have been different if they hadn't let him walk back then. Still, few crimes are as horrifying as betraying the trust of a child, and this next man committed one of the worst imaginable.
And we were asking for what the funds were free.
Lewis Matthews. It all unfolded on April 13, 2019, in Hillsborough County, Florida. Matthews, entrusted with caring for his girlfriend's 10-year-old daughter, turned into her worst nightmare. He sexually assaulted her while she was asleep in the living room, an act so vile it's hard to put into words. Thankfully, her mother discovered what happened and didn't hesitate. She immediately called 911, but Matthews wasn't done. In an attempt to cover his tracks, he took the girl and 2 other children to a gas station. What happened next was beyond disgusting. He forced the girl to strip, poured Clorox bleach on her private parts, and threw her underwear in a dumpster, all in a sick effort to destroy evidence. Fortunately, forensic investigators were one step ahead. They recovered Matthews' DNA from the girl's body and clothing, sealing his fate. He was charged with sexual battery on a victim younger than 12, lewd or lascivious molestation, and tampering with physical evidence. The prosecutors came out swinging, determined to ensure Matthews would never walk free again.
And we were asking for what the funds were free.
During the trial, the courtroom was eerily quiet. No family members came to support Matthews, or the victim. He sat there, showing no remorse or emotion as the evidence piled up against him. The jury didn't need much time to decide. They found him guilty on all charges. When it came time for sentencing, Judge Kimberly Fernandez handed Matthews a life sentence for sexual battery, along with additional sentences for his other charges. But what shocked everyone was Matthews' reaction. He chuckled and even smiled, a chilling display of indifference. Let's pause and replay that moment for a second. He laughed as if it was all a joke, and his lawyer even patted him on the back. It was one of the most unsettling moments in the case. Matthews was a career criminal, already on probation for another crime when he committed this heinous act. Even his own family didn't bother to show up for him. His mother, notably absent, offered no support. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Matthews's response was as cold as you'd expect.
Is there anything that you wish to say?
No, ma'am. I thank you for your time and everything.
Sick, absolutely sick, but not as sick as this final case involving Kenneth Adkins.
I respected him, like, I seen him as my dad, so I would did. At that point, just anything, just like keep him around, so he wouldn't leave me like I did.
Kenneth Adkins was once a respected pastor, a man people looked up to in Brunswick, Georgia. He was someone they trusted, like a father figure in their lives. But behind that image was a much darker reality. Adkins had struggled with addiction in the past, and his toxic views on the LGBTQ+ community had already drawn some criticism. But it wasn't until 2016 that the full extent of his crimes came to light. Adkins was charged with child molestation, 8 counts of it. The victims were young and vulnerable, and Adkins had used his position of trust to manipulate them. One of the victims, now a 22-year-old soldier, bravely took the stand during the trial. He was just 15 when he met Adkins, who took advantage of his trust. The abuse took place in multiple locations, in the church office, in Adkins' car, and even at the beach.
I know you said that they occurred in the office building on G Street. Were there any other places that those acts took place?
There were other victims too, including a young woman who testified that she had been manipulated by Adkins into engaging in sexual activities with him present. She didn't feel she had a choice, especially since she was living with Adkins and his wife at the time. Adkins denied the accusations, sticking to his story that he was innocent, but the evidence was damning. Photos, text messages, and testimonies from the victims all painted a clear picture of what had really happened. The defense tried to fight back, arguing that no laws had been broken since the key victims were 15 and 16, pointing to Georgia's age of consent. They also tried to discredit the victims, suggesting there were personal motivations behind their accusations.
How is it that you could have developed a relationship with Ken Atkins from December of 2009 to January of 2010? How is that even possible?
But the jury wasn't convinced. When the verdict was handed down, Adkins was found guilty on all counts. The judge, Stephen Scarlett, sentenced him to life in prison, but there was a small chance of parole after 35 years. Adkins didn't take responsibility for his actions, though.
I did not molest any children. I did not touch anybody. I didn't have oral sex with anybody. I didn't allow anybody to have oral sex with me. I did not do those things.
Instead, he claimed he was being persecuted because of his political views and likened his case to those of controversial figures like Casey Anthony and George Zimmerman.
I personally believe that I was not only prosecuted but convicted because of who I am and not for what I did. But with that being said, sir, I'm ready to face whatever it is that this court decides.
But it didn't matter in the end. He was going to spend more than 3 decades in prison. Life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 35 years. In the end, none of that mattered. Adkins was going to spend the next 35 years or more behind bars. No matter how much he tried to claim he was innocent or say that it was all a political setup, the truth was, the jury saw right through him. Honestly, it's kind of wild how much he tried to twist the narrative, talking about cases like Casey Anthony and George Zimmerman, trying to suggest he was wrongly convicted, but none of that mattered in the end. For the victims and their families, it was a form of justice. But let's be real, it doesn't undo the harm he caused. He'll be in prison for a long time now, and that's exactly where he belongs. No more manipulating or hurting anyone. Thanks for joining us today. Check out our other videos for more thrilling content.